Hey guys, this is miicrow. I wanted to do a quick news roundup of the Burnanator nerf. Burnanator has recently, or is going to be receiving a nerf tonight. You guys will see this tomorrow, so when you see this video, it will be live. This is going to be reducing the damage per tick from 15% to 10%, and it's also going to be fixing a bug that basically caused Vigor to be completely useless versus Burnanator because the effects would never go away. Burnanator, I think, is still very, very strong even after these changes, and I wanted to talk about why, and I also wanted to address a old thing that we've talked about, but kind of new player, I think, mostly misinformation campaign with Vigor. A lot of people are saying Vigor is the solution to a Burnanator, and I am here to tell you they are full of shit. So Burnanator, how this basically works is every single attack that gets applied to you will be putting a dot on you that's going to be ticking for 10% instead of 15%, and it's going to last for 5 seconds. This dot should expire after 5 seconds, but there are ways to make it be extended for longer, and there's also no internal cooldown on this dot. So basically, and this is how it works with Fire Staff as well. By the way, they have they have an internal cooldown, but the dot is just like a really, really potent as well and behaves the same way as Burnanator does. So both those stack and it creates this damage over time meta, which is I think a lot of people are not enjoying. And there is not a great way to counter this within the game. The weird thing that has spawned out of this is that in the highest level of wars available at the moment, with that being, I would say Interstellar and maybe like one or two other companies that are decent. They have basically all gone back to double tank meta because the best way to counter this is to run tons of absorption, and tanks give a crap ton of absorption. So people are back to double tank meta, holding right click, and the deaths per war went down from maybe 100 to like 70 to 80 again. So it's just like across the army, like people aren't dying again, even with the heal changes, because they adapted and just got tankier. But let's talk about Burnanator specifically in the context that you don't have an SNS and you're trying to kind of prevent the damage from going, or from kind of coming to you. So I made this graph here. Sorry if you just got flashbang, but I don't know how to make Desmos in dark mode. Where I wanted to kind of show if you had a dot on you that was lasting for 10 seconds, how different effects would interact with it in New World. We could do it for 5 seconds for Burnanator, but I think 10 seconds is a little bit easier to think about, like conceptually, than 5 seconds, just because like it's an easy number to kind of base everything off of. So let me get rid of all these colors just so this is a little bit easier to look at first. So this is our dot, right? Our dot is lasting for 10 seconds. It's doing 10% damage over those 10 seconds, which would be equivalent to 100% damage, right? Towards you. If you were to run max Vigor and there was nothing involved whatsoever, this dot would go from a 10-second duration. So this is with full Vigor stat, or like full Vigor on like 4 pieces of gear. It would go from 10 seconds to 2.8 seconds, which is a lot of damage reduction. You'd go from taking 100% damage, right, to 28% damage, which is overall like a lot less damage, right? Like it should be pretty significant. There is another part of this as well, though, where we are going to be looking at the case where people are going to be consistently getting a buff. We're not going to look at burning first, but we are going to be looking at a stat that comes from the intelligence tree from 250. This increases your dot damage by 30%. The way that Vigor works is Vigor works against the base duration. It doesn't work versus the extended duration. This is an extension of the dot. So it's not actually like countered by Vigor. So instead of having that blue line, in this case, we'd be at this green line. So we go from the 10 seconds of dot, we're taking 100% damage, to 58% damage. Still pretty effective, but definitely could be better. And then the other case that we just kind of showed a little bit early is if someone is running the burning perk. The burning perk will cause your dots to last 25% longer. This is also an extension and is not countered by Vigor. So in this case, we are going to be having a dot with all of our Vigor. It's going to be lasting 8.3 seconds, right? So our 4 stacks of Vigor versus a meta build took our 10-second dot down to an 8.3 second dot, which is pretty typical of the meta, but this isn't a fair comparison because what it really would be without this would be this black dot if you ran nothing. So it basically is reducing the duration by about half. We would go from a 15.5 second dot if someone ran all the meta perks, and that would actually be roughly around 8.3 seconds. So it's reducing our damage from 150% to 83%. So it's about like half the damage it's coming is reduced. So it's like it's not bad, but there are better ways to mitigate that damage is what it comes down to. So for example, if you were to pick up 4 refreshing and you had an ice tomb and you were to cleanse it, you would take none of this damage, right? So it's like that's generally the way that people have gone, is either running more cleanses or they do something where they just stack tons of damage absorption by running things like I think it's flame protection. Well, they could run flame protection. I think it's fire absorption potions is like what people typically would run. These are kind of expensive to make, but they last for 45 seconds, and when these are popped, they give you 15% damage absorption towards fire, and that will work towards both the dot and the actual incoming hit. And the dots scale with the incoming hit, right? Because it's the percentage that the 10% is scaling with all the absorption that's incoming, so you could actually reduce the damage over time by just running more fire resistance, which I guess kind of is intuitive, but that's like another option for people that aren't aware. And then lastly, you could also block this with something like a short sword and shield, which is why we get back to double tank meta, where people are starting to use sword and shield for not only for damage mitigation for themselves, but in order to live, right? Like if you are an SNS spear, you're diving a fire staff and they start pumping you, as long as you're like blocking most of the frontal attacks, like you're not going to be getting a ton of dots on you, and your healer is generally going to be able to keep you up even with the changes. Especially because Sword and Shield has a pretty broken passive on there that gives you incoming healing called Recuperation. So this will increase your incoming healing. If you're blocking, you also get defensive formation up if you're running the tree correctly. So you're going to be getting healed for a lot more and taking a lot less damage, same with your allies, and just makes it incredibly tanky. And that's one of the reasons why Fire Staff hasn't been like a huge thorn in the meta for like large scale PvP, but it's been like it's always been like pretty good, but it's never been like, oh, we have 20 Fire Staffs slotted and we can't do anything about it. It's like, no, like 20 SNS spears is better than 20 Fire Staffs every day of the week. So it's like one of those things where it's like really, really OP, I think, in small to mid scale. But in larger scale, when you have access to consistent heals, which is not a factor in OPR, because AGS, for some reason, with all the brains they have, with all the talent they hired, cannot figure out how to get one healer per group in each group in OPR, which is amazing. Like you have all these talented engineers at AGS that can't solve this problem for some reason, which is resulting in fundamentals from large scale PvP not applying, and is resulting with a lot of people dying to stupid fire staffs and just in general not enjoying the OPR game. I am glad that they're actually looking at like nerfing this a bit though. I was really nervous that they're going to release this new OPR map that they're talking about, which will feature building bridges to cross from point to point as your PvE activity, which will be interesting, and just like overall people just be like flaming fire staff players and just like not be having a good time. So it's good that they're like kind of taking a step and addressing this. But I think fundamentally, the bigger issue here is New World's a little bit too, I'd argue, like kind of scared in their approach for defensive perks. I think if Vigor worked off of not just like, if Vigor just was a total duration overall, it would be perfectly fine. Like they overcomplicate this and have stuff work off base, stuff work off extension. Like just make it work off everything. If you don't want to get hit by dot effects, like you be able to make a build that like works that way, so you don't just get punished by dot effects. Because it'd be one thing if like people really had to spec out to like get these dot extensions, but like the 250 int is like automatic. Like everybody has this, and then burning is like already like very, very common as well. So it's like just not great. It's super practical to hit these, and then because of that, Vigor is not very useful because there's not a great way to counter it. But let me know if you guys have any questions about this. If you have any questions about specific perks or interactions, maybe I can do some like roundup videos for the new players. But I just wanted to kind of put this out here because I saw a bunch of people fighting with each other, a good amount of misinformation going out, and just kind of wanted to say something. That being said, I'll see you guys later.